What is up, everybody? It's Sunday night at 7 o'clock, which means it's time for football. And it's time for baseball.
Are you ready for some football?
And it's time for the Do Dissidents podcast. Thank you guys very much for watching. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular. What's up, bitch?
Hello.
So, we got a good crowd
bitches?
filing in already. I think I know why. We got a big show for you guys tonight.
Tonight we got a really big show.
We have a great show for you this evening.
We got a great show. We have
musical guest
young
Bruce
men from
Springsteen is
Liverpool.
here. Yeah, yeah, right. The young men from Liverpool are here.
They're really burning up the charts.
Just want to kick off the show by saying you can subscribe at patreon.com/Do Dissidents to help us keep this show going. Super chats are always welcome if you want to throw a buck or two in our tip jar. I got Bronx blood in me. Like I said, my grandfather was born in the Bronx. My father was born in the Bronx, and the New York Yankees are facing elimination as we speak right now. And I'm skipping the game to be here with you guys. So let's throw a couple bucks in the tip jar, make it worth my while, if you know what I'm saying. You know
well,
what I mean?
we have somebody who says they actually left Aaron Mate's call in for us. So
Yeah, there you go.
I would
There you
say
go.
that's bigger than leaving the Yankees.
We actually have a Twitch audience tonight. So thank you to our Twitch audience. We're getting some Twitch comments in here, which we've never really had much before. So thank you guys very much. We don't really know what Twitch is or how it works, but I don't know. We'll take it. I don't know what these comments are.
Finally, that vicious attack on She-Hulk is paying off.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All the She-Hulk haters seem to be on Twitch.
Yeah. Well, it could be. I don't know what these comments are in Twitch. There's cartoon cats and shit like that. I don't know. The Twitch crowd, you're a weird bunch, but thanks for coming anyway. We love you. All right, let's get started. We got a few topics that we have to cover tonight. We have, of course, Kyle Kulinski's just awful, self-immolating take on the AOC protesters. I have a feeling that's why a lot of y'all filed in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to make the savvy business move here, which is we're going to put that last. We're going to make you sit through the other stuff before we get to that. But we have two great segments coming up.
First, we're gonna read all of The Great Gatsby.
Yeah, right.
And then we're doing Moby Dick.
And actually, we're going to do Mighty Mouse. We're going to sing Mighty Mouse, Andy Kaufman style.
Here I come to save the day.
And we have, of course, have the Vincent Van Gogh vandalization to get to. But first, we have a segment that we really put together quite a bit throughout the day. Midterm season is in full force. By the way, midterm watch party, November 8th. We're going to start, I believe, at 6:30 p.m., half an hour before the first polls close. Be here for that. That's going to be an amazing night. We're going to have guests. We do the whole thing. We give the best election coverage of any indie media channel. I guarantee you that. And so that's going to be a ton of fun. We're going to have a whole week of programming leading up to the midterms. But before we
New Dissidents
obviously
gives
get
good
into
coverage. It's on
Yes.
every bathroom wall all around the city. New Dissidents gives good coverage.
Exactly. All right. So now the Twitch commenters are actually commenting on what we're saying. So I guess you guys are not bots. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. YouTubers, you're going to have to keep those comments coming in because we get all of our comments in one feed. And right now Twitch is alive. I don't know what happened there. I don't know how we got an audience on Twitch, but like I said, thank you guys very much. We love you. We don't know who you are or how we got to you, but we love you. Anyway, first segment here relates to the midterms. Polls between John Fetterman and Dr. Mehmet Oz are tightening. John Fetterman is showing some evidence that his stroke recovery is perhaps a bit slower than expected or perhaps not as thorough as expected. He's having some speech issues and apparently some auditory processing issues. And so his first TV interview in quite some time used one of those prompters, one of those machines where he was able to read what the interviewer was saying. And the interviewer on NBC also pressed him on some health questions, and this ignited a firestorm both in mainstream media and independent media. All right, so let's get to this. We're going to play this first segment here. This is quick just to set this up.
Say you're on the road to full recovery, but right now, voters really have to take your word for it. We've asked for your medical records. We've asked to have a conversation with someone from your medical team, to interview your physician. You've declined those requests. Why?
Well, I feel like we have been very transparent in a lot of different ways. When our doctor has already given a letter saying that I'm able to serve and to be running.
I mean, respectfully, that letter from your physician, that was 6 months ago. Don't voters deserve to know your status now?
Being in front of thousands and thousands of people and having interviews and getting around all across Pennsylvania, that gives everybody and the voters decide, if they think that it's really the issue.
All right. So they went back and forth for a little bit longer, but you kind of get the point there. All right. So that got some pushback from a lot of people, including wife of John Fetterman, Giselle Barreto Fetterman, who expressed her displeasure at that line of inquiry on the Fast Politics podcast, which came out 2 days ago. So let's hear a clip of her response and how she would like this handled.
With that interview yesterday, when the journalist sort of took some liberties with her sort of supposition of his health, how did you feel?
I don't like saying rage because I think that's a really unhealthy feeling. And when you feel those things, it only harms yourself. But I just, what a disservice that she did to not only my husband, but to anyone facing a disability and working through it. And I don't know how there were not consequences, right? I mean, there are consequences for folks in these positions who are any of the isms. I mean, she was ableist, and that's what she was in her interview. It was appalling to the entire disability community, and I think to journalism. So I was shocked. I'm still really upset about it. And I think the positive is it's brought a lot of conversations around accommodations, around rights, around ableism, right? I mean, ableism was trending on Twitter.
Okay. Russell, yeah. I know you're chomping at the bit. I just want to make one very quick point before I toss to you. What consequences does she want this journalist to face? What do you mean consequences? These guys, they're always out to fire somebody, always out to muzzle somebody. What consequence? What, because she asked a question about your health? Candidates have to make their medical records public. That's part of running for office. You had a stroke. They're asking you a question about your health. Now, you don't have to love the line of inquiry. You don't have to love the question, but consequences?
Right.
You want her fired over this? I'm sorry. These are not people I trust with power. I'm sorry. When Bernie went on Anderson Cooper and Anderson Cooper sandbagged him with that bullshit Fidel Castro nonsense, he did, in my opinion, he did the world a great disservice by bringing up that issue out of nowhere. That cost a lot of people a lot by sandbagging him like that. I knew he was going to do that. I think he's a New World Order hatchet man piece of shit. I did not call for him to be fired from 60 Minutes. I didn't call for 60 Minutes to be canceled.
You're talking about Anderson Cooper. God knows what kind of weird skull and bones rituals he pulls in his basement.
Okay, but you understand the point that I'm making. The point that I'm making is I can hate a news personality. Yes. I can hate an interviewer all I want. I do not call for them to be silenced or thrown off the air. This is a sick thing. These people always first, there should be consequences because she asked you a question. Nonsense. Nonsense.
It's the call the manager party. It's the call the manager movement. These are, and let me, before I dive in, let me make it absolutely clear. I think a sock puppet would make a better senator than Mehmet Oz. It's not about that. It's about the fact that a journalist went in and asked completely legitimate questions of somebody who has had a severe stroke, and we went right into clown world. Everybody, it's incredible, just had one narrative and immediately went to the woke take. Oh, it's ableism, because that's their go-to, right? Because it's very easy to put the ick on the person by doing that. Oh, It's ableism. So, for example, in BuzzFeed News, and I want to share this actually. I'm going to share my screen here.
Make sure you got all your windows closed.
Hang on. Okay, there we go. All right. There we are. All right, you have it?
Oh my God. Oh no, I'm just kidding.
All right. So disability activist Charis Hill told BuzzFeed News that they were so upset at Burns' questions and the editor's framing of Fetterman's responses, leaving in moments of silence that showed Fetterman reading, for example, that they couldn't finish watching the interview. Hill called on NBC to apologize for the overt discrimination they just put on air. The way Burns handled that interview will only worsen attitudes and violence towards disabled people in a time when virtual accommodations are being removed left and right after they were implemented overnight in 2020. So it seems like this is kind of a go-to. Is there a rash of violence against disabled people that I'm not aware of? Let me take a really courageous stand. I'm against that. Okay. But I'm not aware. I don't see how this interview is going to make people get up and say, you know what? There's a disabled guy down the block. Let me go commit violence against him. What are you even talking about? This is the problem here. It winds up making people not take the left seriously when they have legitimate complaints and legitimate concerns. Because outside of this little bubble of lobotomy cases who don't realize what a fucking joke this is, you look like an idiot running around saying, how dare this journalist commit an act of journalism against our preferred candidate? How dare she ask a stroke victim if he is capable of serving when he needs closed captioning to conduct the interview? Now, a lot of them, their spin is a lot of people are disabled. A lot of people, okay, that's fine. A lot of people who are disabled are not in the Senate. And then their next question will be, well, should they be disqualified from the Senate? Well, that's what we're trying to figure out. That's the purpose of these questions. Because unless I'm mistaken, they do not give you closed captioning in the Senate. And the Senate is all about listening to speeches all day, right? It's all about debate. Do they make that technology available for senators? My understanding is it's against the rules, actually, to have that kind of technology in the Senate chambers. Now, you could definitely...
I think it was James Madison who wrote that they are not allowed to do closed captioning in the Senate. I believe
that was it. I thought it was Adams.
We'll have to check the record on that, but I thought it was Madison.
Okay.
He was old school like that, you know what I mean?
Maybe I know. Well, you know, you're in college now. You're a college boy, so I'm gonna go with your take. That is how is that not relevant to the job? And then they're bringing up, and we'll get into some of these clips. They're comparing it to FDR being in a wheelchair. How the fuck do you compare that? He is not able to process spoken language. That is not relevant for a senator. Now, listen, I understand you don't want to see Dr. Crudite in the Senate. I don't want to see him in the Senate either. But that is not a reason to attack a journalist for doing journalism and then to go on. And again, you're right. That's terrifying. They go right to, well, this person should face consequences. This person should be fired. When I see that, as you say, I don't want these people anywhere near power. What will a world with people who think that a journalist who asks a stroke victim pointed questions about their capacity to serve, somebody who cannot process auditory information and needs closed captioning, to attack this reporter as if that's out of line? What would these people do without any check on their power? How would they exercise it?
All right, so we're going to go to a couple of clips here. Before we do, our friend and patron James threw us a super chat. Thank you so much, my friend. Much appreciated. He says, props to Mrs. Fetterman for coddling her hubby. I love the coddling hashtag. I like that. It would be nice to see Dems fight as hard as against GOP policies as they do against mild criticism. Yeah. Look, and what I want to say, I just want to reiterate what I said before. Look, she's the wife of the candidate. They have a race they're trying to win. The vote is in 3 weeks. I got no problem with her pushing back on the inquiry. Whether it's legit, whether I agree with her pushing back on that or not, I understand. You're the wife of the candidate. You're trying to win. Fine. Calling for consequences, basically calling for her head, for her removal, that's out of bounds. That I'm not with. You could say it was a bullshit question. I don't personally agree with a bullshit question, but like I said, the spot you're in, I get it. Okay, that's part of the campaign. It's part of, running a campaign down the home stretch. Don't call for her to be fired. That's just way over the line.
Well, that's what these people do. It's a pattern. They find a woke basis for prosecuting the person in the public square. And then once they've all gone in lockstep with that narrative and tried to build such an echo chamber that you are a monster if you even speak against this narrative. How could you even question this narrative? So they're a narrative that at first blush, before they build this consensus, is just clown world crazy. I don't think the average person, unless they're extreme partisan, would have watched that interview and thought it was out of line. But by the time they're done, oh, wow, I can't believe she said that, right? Once they build that consensus, now they go after the person.
Right. And speaking of echo chamber,
also a warning to anyone else.
Right. And speaking of echo chamber, let's play a couple examples of the echo chamber here. All right. So first up, we have Emma Vigeland from the Majority Report. Here is her take on this. Briefly, this isn't her entire take, but we don't want to sit here all night playing clips from other shows. So here is, in a nutshell, I thought the most clippable, sort of comment-worthy portion of her take.
Transcription software right now.
Oops. My apologies.
Yes, he has to use transcription software right now. And would this be an issue if John Fetterman were deaf? Would this be an issue if John Fetterman were blind? Would you be highlighting that at the beginning of your piece? There are people who have auditory processing issues who need to use transcription software. Does that bar them from holding a Senate seat? Because that is the undertone of the piece.
Yes, actually, those would be legitimate questions. Would it necessarily disqualify them? Not necessarily, but yes, it's just weird. Like, would you ask someone who was deaf if they could serve in the Senate? Yes, I would. It's people making speeches all day. I would ask, is there a transcription? Is there something in the Senate chamber that will allow this person to follow the debate? Because
which there should be, by the way.
Yes,
we would advocate
there should
for that.
be.
Yeah.
There should be. I agree.
They wouldn't need a transcription service for you. You're coming in like 300 decibels here.
Too much.
We don't need closed captioning here.
We don't. We definitely.
I'm messing with you. Go ahead.
It's my French roast.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, you got the coffee tonight. That's why.
Hey, man, it's better than blow.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to throw you off.
Yeah, so, yes, I agree. You know what? There should be accommodations for people with these disabilities. But the question you have to ask is, are there? And if there are not, well, yes, that's a problem if someone is deaf. It is a problem if someone is blind and they're going to work in a job where you have to look at a lot of these Senate speeches involve visual aids. They love to bring in their charts and their whiteboards. Now, are there ways to deal with that? Are you going to do some kind of auditory aid to explain what you're saying? And again, I think there should be. I agree that that's a problem, that people with those disabilities perhaps can't serve in the Senate because they can't follow certain things that are happening in the Senate. But she's saying, would you ask those questions under these circumstances? Yes, you would. Like she says it like it's an own. Like, right, no, man, mic drop. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yes, you would ask.
And look, this does not have to be that difficult. Like you said, Russell, you'd rather have a sock puppet in the Senate than Dr. Oz. When Bernie had a heart attack on the campaign trail, people were like, should he drop out? I said, hell no. I would support Bernie if he were dead over everyone else in that primary field. I would literally vote for a dead Bernie Sanders over Pete Buttigieg or Joe Biden or any of those other people. So this doesn't have to be complicated. This doesn't have to turn into this. Look, I had a stroke. I'm recovering. All right. There are some obstacles that I'm going to have to overcome, but I will overcome them, and I am fit to serve. And you should be absolutely transparent with medical records and doctor's notes. You shouldn't hand somebody a 6-month-old note and then say, leave me alone about it. Here, I'm doing rallies, whatever. Just be transparent. Like I said, this ultimately is going to come down to the issues, but I'll get to that in a second. Well, I want to play Anna's piece also, which I actually have not seen yet. So I'm going to watch this for the first time with all of you guys.
I edited together the highlights.
Okay.
The lowlights, we might say.
Before we get into that clip, Patreon members do have call-in access to this show, so if you could support the show at patreon.com/do-dissidents, we would love you for that, and we can hear from you. We do have a patron caller on the line now. It says your devices are not connected, so if you just want to hang out and watch from inside the meeting room there, you're welcome to do that. If you want to talk, just you have to allow StreamYard access to your microphone, and then turn your mic on as a signal for me to admit you, and then you can say your piece there. All right, but if that's only if you want. Okay, you just sent us a private chat message, which I'll get to in a second. Oh, here we go. Oh, you just turned your mic on.
No dick pics.
Yeah, right. Here.
Sorry.
Hey, what's up? Your name is Kaz Garath. What's your actual name?
Keith.
Keith. Oh, hey, Keith. You're one of our newer patrons. Thank you so much, and it's great to meet you.
Yep, sure am. I'm just thinking, I put it in the private chat, but, the idea that someone who is deaf, needs teleprompter assistance versus someone who's had a stroke. He could very well have issues parsing something from a teleprompter or closed captioning in a way that someone who's deaf wouldn't. So I think, it's not definite, but it's definitely a possibility.
No, I mean, that's a good point. Strokes can be really terrible. My girlfriend in high school, who, I was with for quite a while, so I knew her family pretty well. Her father had a devastating stroke, and I followed his recovery, and it can really be an awful thing. And there's a lot of mystery when someone is recovering from a stroke, because it's not always easy to tell. I mean, Fetterman seems far enough along where it would be easier to tell this, but when someone is recovering for a stroke, you don't know if it's that they just can't put the words together or if they can't think of the words they're trying to say. It's very difficult to tell because all you see is someone looking for words, and it could be mind to mouth function that's impaired, or it could just be mind. Right? Yeah. It's tough to know that. All right, so that is a good point. We're going to go to Anna. So, Keith, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to mute again, and I'm going to remove you from the meeting room. But then if you wanted to talk again, you're more than welcome. Just turn your mic back on, and that'll be my signal to let you back in, okay?
Fair enough. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Keith. Appreciate it. All right, let's go to Anna Kasparian. Here we go.
Fetterman was treated poorly. John Fetterman was treated poorly, to say the least, during his interview with NBC News. That interview was conducted by Dasha Burns, and she's now putting out a statement, kind of backtracking after she has received a flood of criticism for her ableist language and tone. Now, following that question and his answer, Burns pressed Fetterman over and over again on why he hasn't released his medical records. Keep in mind, by the way, he has been incredibly transparent about his stroke, about his condition, about his recovery process. He has shared a letter from his doctor indicating that he's doing well, he's recovering well, but that's not good enough. When are we gonna see your medical?
Well, that wasn't good enough when Donald Trump did it. When Trump had a letter from his doctor saying he was Superman, you guys all mocked it as, oh, this is, any doctor can write you a note saying you're good to go.
Well, and the way that she's saying it, like, well, obviously a stroke victim doesn't have to release his medical records. What a monster to ask
this
him
is not
to
like a new
release his
thing.
medical records.
Right. It's not a new thing. Candidates always, as a matter of form, release medical records.
Of course.
It's been a thing forever.
The man had a stroke, and this is something we were talking about offline, and this is part of what pisses me off about this whole thing. We moved over to the alternative media. I have the most.
No, don't worry.
I'm
gonna play it again.
We moved over to the alternative media partly because in the corporate media, it's always so obvious that it's one rule for the people they align with. It's another rule for everybody else. Clearly, her take on this, if it were a Republican who had a stroke, who wasn't releasing his medical records, would not be this far outrage that someone would even ask. It would be outrage that those records were not being released. So what the fuck are you doing in alternative media? Why are you here? Why are you here? You are the AOC of alternative media. You are fucking useless. You are useless. We recruited you to do one thing, and now you're just doing the same thing as the thing we were trying to get away from.
Well, when you talk about a double standard, right, whereas liberals would think these are valid questions when aimed at Republicans but not at Democrats, this is true within the Democratic Party as well. Jordan Sheridan actually made this point on a stream when he covered this. It was a very good point. Progressives were not allowed to ask questions about Joe Biden's mental faculties during the Democratic primary.
Yep.
You're an ableist for doing that. Yep. When they were perfectly valid questions, and a lot of Bernie supporters were asking them because it was a vulnerability and a legitimate concern, obviously, now 2 years later, right? Yep. And so even within the Democratic Party, this has been a sort of smear tactic against people who had questions about Joe Biden, right? Yep. So there's a double standard within the party itself. All right, let's go back.
Medical records. Where are your medical records?
I don't know if she has only ever cavorted around with angelic beings who are perfectly fit in body and mind, but I'm going to blow her mind right now. There are people who can't hear even as well as him. There are people who can't hear at all. There are people who can't see at all, who can't speak at all. There's a variety of disabilities.
Well,
that doesn't mean that
they're not fit to serve, according to Dasha Burns. You know, if you might want to run for Congress one day, but you have a disability like blindness, you might be deaf, you're just not fit to serve. Sorry.
What if you're paralyzed?
I mean, no, but
well, I mean, come on, can you really serve?
That's exactly the same.
If you can't walk, if you can't do a kip up, can you really serve?
One of the greatest presidents, if not the greatest president in United States history, was a disabled president, FDR.
Okay. Yeah, and you know what medium he used? Radio. You know what you need to listen to the radio? You need to be able to hear.
You need to be able to hear, and you need to be able to process auditory information.
Right.
Yeah.
Her handling and her commentary, let's just keep it real, because that's what this is. Yeah. She is communicating to the audience that she doesn't believe that he's fit to serve due to this temporary disability. And even if it weren't temporary, if we're dealing with someone who might need to read captions to understand.
First of all, I'm sorry. She's not saying he's not fit to serve. She's just asking him, what's the update on the stroke? That's it. She's not accusing him of being unfit to serve. I mean, what are you watching?
Well, because they want to burn the witch. They have to justify burning the witch by pretending that she didn't do journalism, that she did opinion. Because NBC is the network known for going hard at Democrats. That's why they have an anti-Democrat bias at NBC.
Right. Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Every time Donald Trump slurs a word, the Young Turks get millions of views off of it. Right? Millions of views off of it. This guy's unfit to be there. Look at this. What is he on? Is he on drugs? Is he losing his mind? Is he that?
He's framing it that way to justify the entire segment. We're not going after her for asking questions. We're going after her for inserting her opinion through the questions, because the questions are themselves an opinion.
But that's just, as a matter of fact, not what she did.
Well, of course. It's
not what she did at all. Yeah.
Understand the questions, whatever, for what's the word I'm looking for? For a longer period.
Oh, what's the word you're looking for? Are you fit to be on air, Anna? What's the word I'm looking for?
Of time.
Sure.
That doesn't mean that they're unfit to serve. Some people have disabilities, but they might be great candidates, great leaders. I mean, are we really having this conversation right now? We literally have a United States senator who has severe dementia. Okay? I mean, we're really having this conversation right now?
What the fuck does that have to do with anything? So you've got a senator with dementia, so we shouldn't be questioning a senatorial candidate who had a stroke? What the fuck does the one have to do with the other?
Right. Well, what they're doing
really
is
having that conversation right now.
They're pointing to that double standard as if two wrongs make a right. In other words, like if we're not allowed to question Dianne Feinstein's mental faculties, because that's who she's talking about.
I'm happy to.
But that's the logical flaw in what she's saying. She's saying, well, if Dianne Feinstein can serve with dementia, then why should we be asking these questions of John Fetterman?
Right.
But she shouldn't be, right? Right. Now, you want to point to a media double standard because, see, here's what I think is happening here, all right? And this is where we move past some of this.
Ben's asking who has dementia. Dianne Feinstein. It's
Dianne Feinstein is pretty much
you can't even call it an open secret because it's not a secret. They're just
right. It's not even a secret anymore.
It's like when Caligula named his horse an emperor. They're just going to let it happen.
Right. Exactly. Here's what I think is happening here. Yes, NBC and the corporate media at large, of course, they have a Democrat bias. They also have a corporate Democrat bias, and in their mind. And this is where I think we are ships passing in the night here. We're not exactly matching up. I don't mean you and me, Russell. I mean like shows like ours and TYT and things like that. Corporate media sees John Fetterman as of the Sanders wing of the Democratic Party. And so corporate media is not going to be as nice to him because they are out to discredit the Sanders wing. Now, we see John Fetterman. I see John Fetterman. I see what I've nicknamed him Rust Belt Obama. He plays the role of a working class populist Rust Belter with no substance to back it up. So I think John Fetterman is a bit of a fugazi, right? But nonetheless, the media perceives him to be of the Sanders wing. And so they're not covering for him the way they would cover for Joe Biden or Dianne Feinstein. And to networks like TYT, who are still in the sort of Justice Democrat lane, still in the prop up the squad lane, they feel very protective of these Bernie-esque Democrat candidates. And so they see this as a real double standard. And they see this as the media having the knives out for John Fetterman, which may be true. I mean, I don't think they would, forget about not think, they did not press Joe Biden on these issues the way they pressed John Fetterman in that interview on these issues. They covered for Joe Biden.
As soon as they realized they weren't going to get their bloodless technocrat Buttigieg or their, marijuana crusader Harris, and they were going to be stuck with Biden, all of a sudden they went from Andrea Mitchell. She was questioning Biden's cognitive fitness.
Right. They shut all that down.
All of a sudden you were a fucking ableist monster if you asked those questions. And people see through it. This is the problem. This is why this is important. Look, I have enough of a Machiavellian streak that if this shit worked, I'd have a grudging respect for it. I might not like it, but I would give it its due. It doesn't work because it's very transparent to most people. Unless you are a hardcore partisan, unless you are very deep in this corporate media bubble, which probably means you have a class status that makes you invested in picking up elite narratives and projecting them to the people around you. Unless you're one of those people, this is a joke. It's ridiculous. Of course she has a right to ask those questions. You're not going to convince any rational-minded person who is not completely brainwashed that these are illegitimate questions to ask of a stroke victim running for the Senate. In the end, it hurts us to project these kinds of people into the forefront of what most people understand as the left. Because a lot of people still, even after all this schism, all this rift, they don't realize how much of a rift there is. They don't really realize we're all over here and they're all over there.
Yeah. Now, as it pertains to this race, the issue of John Fetterman's health, I actually think that Vigeland's made, a fairly decent and fairly obvious point later on in that Majority Report segment, which is that, ultimately this is going to come down to the issues, and I think she's right about that. I don't think his health is going to be a major factor in the outcome. My gut tells me and it's not just my gut, it's also polling numbers. But my gut tells me that the reason we're seeing a swing in momentum back to the GOP, not as dramatic as swung to the Democrats in the immediate aftermath of Dobbs, but we have seen steady momentum back to the GOP in terms of polling as October has gone on. This really started early to mid-September, actually, is that the macro themes of the race are coming into focus. And there was a fascinating Harvard-Harris poll that came out over the weekend, which we're going to get into in our next live stream. This is a packed one, but it's fascinating. The top 3 issues on voters' minds are inflation, jobs, and immigration. And when you ask the question of voters, what are the Republicans' priorities ranked? Those priorities are, forget in which order, but they're those exact same 3. Inflation, jobs, border. When they asked voters what are the Democrats' most important issues, none of those issues ranked in top 3. The perception is that the Democrats' number 1 issue, I remember this because it's fucking absurd, is January 6th, and then women's rights, and then green policy. So there is a perception out there, whether you think it's right or not, that Republicans just have their finger on the pulse of what most Americans care about, whereas Democrats don't. And coming down the home stretch of a race, the issues come into focus. And if one side is perceived to have their finger on that pulse and the other side is not, you're going to see momentum trend back to the GOP. Of course. That is why Oz is rising. That's why Herschel Walker was rising until the, you know what came out, right? That's why Laxalt in Nevada is rising. That explains the trend, is that at the end of the day, the Democrats come off, as they always do, as just out of touch with the concerns of ordinary people.
Because they are. The Republicans may not actually care about helping people, but they always seem to have a better grasp on what people are actually talking about what people are actually caring about. They're not as informed by elite academic perspectives. That's just not the world that the average Republican politician is coming out of. And as a result, they're not blinded by that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to our second segment here. Once again, I just want to plug our Patreon, patreon.com/do dissidents. We have a wonderful crowd in here. Thank you guys very much. And thank you to our Twitch audience for tuning in. We got a bunch of Twitch commenters tonight, so thank you so much. Nikki, I believe that's your name. I lost your thing in the comment, but you said something about sharing our channel to the Twitch. Go ahead.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yes, please like this stream, share this stream, and subscribe to this channel. Absolutely.
And whatever the hell you're talking about on the Twitch, you can send it, you can mail it, whatever you want to do.
Whatever you do.
Go Twitch.
Nikki said that she shared our YouTube channel on her Twitch stream and brought viewers in that way. You said that you did us some favors there. Thank you. Whatever you did, thank you for it. Again, I don't really understand, but thank you very much. All right, let's go.
He's not even a boomer, this one.
Yeah, right, exactly. I'm not even right. Exactly. I'm not even a boomer, and I don't know Twitch.
Neither am I, actually. I'm not.
Yeah. There you go. Twitch into his house. LOL. Welcome, everybody. All right.
Maybe we can start reviewing video games finally.
Hey, there you go. There you go. By the way, does anybody know the Yankee score? If you know the Yankee score, drop it in the chat for me, please. I once went to a book signing at Barnes & Noble with, it was Billy Crystal, and maybe he had a guest with him, maybe he didn't, but he was there, and he's a big Yankee fan, and it was the night of a big Yankee game, and he was missing the Yankee game to be at the signing. And so I gave him a score update when I went up to get my book signed. And he invited me to actually sit up with him for the whole night and give him score updates. But I didn't do it. I don't know why I didn't do it. I didn't know if he was serious or not. He sounded serious, but I couldn't tell. So I didn't want to make an asshole of myself and take him seriously and then have him say, no, actually, I was just kidding. Get the hell away from me, you weirdo. Right.
3-0 Yankees.
3-0 Yankees. Let's go, Yankees. Thank you, Virtuoso.
Virtuoso is a trusted source.
We trust Virtuoso. That game last night was the worst managed baseball game I've seen in a very, very long time. I won't say it's the absolute worst. Joe Girardi had some head scratchers, but what a devastating loss last night. But hopefully they can bring it back to the Bronx. So Nikki is now explaining it's a raid. At the end of the stream, you can type raid and then the channel name to send your audience to another stream. All right, beautiful.
Do we paint our faces blue before we go and all that?
Well,
like it's
thank you.
Raid.
I appreciate that very much. All right. Something happened in the National Gallery over in Britain to a Vincent van Gogh painting called Sunflowers. Some climate protesters poured some tomato soup over that painting. So I'm sure you've seen this. This has gone viral, but just in case, let's take a look here. Hold on, bear with me, folks.
Security.
All right. Sorry, I just wanted a recording of that without the comment there because we're going to clip this later. But Arpoon went back and watched your first video show on YouTube. I was the 28th view. Was that? I think that was just an audio episode with a video graphic overlaid. But I think it was our first ever podcast episode that we ever did. And I remember that being a fun one. So thanks for checking that out. And everybody, please, like I said, like this stream and subscribe to this channel and check out our back catalog. We got some great stuff for you guys. All right. So we just saw that. We just saw some young climate activists take a can of soup.
They actually, and then they glued themselves to the wall and they started making pronouncements. They started going, "Is a work of art more important?" They were a lot like Tessa Thompson and Sorry to Bother You. It was kind of this whole,
Right.
these very grand speeches. Is it more important than the world? People are dying in wildfires. It was like Dieter from Sprockets back in the day on Saturday
Right.
Night Live. Yeah, this is not the way. This is not the way to encourage people to join the climate movement. If I thought it was, you know what? Okay. All right. I could live with that. You want to impress me? Go do that in the lobby of Exxon. Why don't you go do that? Why don't you walk into the lobby of BP? Now, those people don't have liberal sensibilities. You might get tasered a little bit. But go over there. What did Van Gogh ever do to you? This poor crazy bastard. He cut his own ear off, man. Like, why are you messing with Van Gogh? Why are you messing with the legacy of Van Gogh?
Well, that's the thing. Van Gogh was as tortured a soul as has ever lived. And so the idea of defacing a Van Gogh art because you're despaired for the future. I mean, Van Gogh killed himself at age 37. He never made $1 in his life. He lived with his brother his whole life. He didn't make lots of these artists back then and writers, Poe, the same thing. Poe never profited off of his works. Neither did Van Gogh. Van Gogh suffered from all kinds of mental illnesses. He had hallucinations, depressions, severe alcoholism. I mean, he was a tortured soul, just like you guys are, who did that, just like many people are. Van Gogh, he was a comrade in that sense.
Right. I mean, of all people to pick, to go after fucking Van Gogh. Like the patron saint of tortured artists.
Right. I mean, you pour soup on a Jackson Pollock, you actually make it better, right? You actually add to the work. That's basically what Pollock's work is.
And really, and actually, Taibbi made this point as well, whose article I'm going to go to. Why didn't you do this on a Warhol? That would make some kind of sense.
Yeah, that's true.
Do the soup on the soup.
The soup on soup. Yeah,
exactly. There you go. Now, but this is what's really disturbing to me, and I thought Taibbi in his article on this today summed it up very well.
Go ahead, read that. I'm going to let my cat out of here before he chews through our fucking Ethernet cable. I'll be right back.
I don't buy the idea that thought was put into what to throw at a Van Gogh and not where to throw it. It's just too much of a coincidence that campaigns of kids dumping on Botticelli and Van Gogh are taking place in the middle of a years-long war on art, literature, music, humor, and even math and science, when there are movements to obliterate entire fields like classics, and professors are fired for everything from reading passages from great books to teaching subjects students deem too difficult. Young people seem more and more to come out of college convinced ancient thinkers have nothing important to teach them and may even actively symbolize the politics of exclusion, a la Beethoven. Whoever is teaching these kids is robbing them of all the joy of learning and using them as political pawns. Another theme of dystopian literature that's proved depressingly on target is that the youthful urge for idealism would be appropriated for society's ugliest work, especially destruction. Quote, I'm afraid of children my own age, says young Clarice in Fahrenheit 451. They kill each other. Did it always used to be that way? Yeah, that's it. That's it. It's part of an overall disdain for beauty, for culture, for art, for literature, for the past. And all of this is, this phrase was really coined by people on the right. But if you watch the struggle sessions in Maoist China, if you watch the show trials in Russia, it is cultural Marxism. When you look at the tone of it, it is this absolute hatred for all ideas that came before, all culture that came before, all art, all philosophy that came before. What it seems as if they don't understand is that human history is full of horror. And if you eliminate the greatest things that the civilizations of the earth have ever produced, whether that is the West or whether it's the East or whether it's the Arab world, all you're left with is the horror. And it makes a lot of sense because they are so fixated on the horrors of the past that they don't see the great things that have been produced by these civilizations. These are people who are not comfortable with contradiction. They're not comfortable with paradox. They're not comfortable with nuance. Because if you are going to invalidate all of the cultural products of cultures that have committed atrocities, well, you need to burn Sufi poetry. You need to burn the Tao Te Ching. You need to burn the I Ching. You need to get rid of everything that basically every major civilization has ever produced. This reflects what Taibbi's saying here. It's a general cultural madness that is seizing some people that is just more akin to religious fanaticism than it is to any tradition of philosophical or civic debate that we have in the West.
I mean, I think that's well said, and I think that's true, but I would add something to this, and that paragraph of Taibbi's piece jumped out at me also. And what I would add is that if you want young people to develop a reverence for the classics, right, a reverence for art, a reverence for literature, a reference for the great works of theater, you have to make this liberal arts education that you're selling them, you have to make it start to pay off. Because when people take these courses in college and they exit $150,000 in debt with no way to dig out of it, and decades later they're being hounded by rat bastard lawyers to collect settlements on student loans that they couldn't keep up with, that reverence for that experience goes right down the fucking toilet. They say, what did I do this for? What did I do this for? What's the point of this? What enrichments did I gain from this? And you might think that's a bit of a stretch, but I don't think it's as much of a stretch as people think. I think part of the nihilism that young people are feeling is because they feel like exposure to these ideas, exposure to these experiences, don't actually result in anything revelatory for them. They get a piece of paper saying they learned this shit. 80% of this shit Goes in one ear, out the other. They forget it a few years later, and they get stuck with a bill that they have trouble paying off in a world that is deteriorating environmentally.
Right.
And so I think that is an expression of despair. I think it's a nihilistic expression of hopelessness. And it's, of course, a scummy thing to do, to take a can of soup and throw it on a Van Gogh. I do not condone it. To the speeches that they gave while they were glued to the wall, why should we enjoy art when the world is such a dark place? Well, that's exactly why you should enjoy art. That's the whole purpose of art.
Right.
The whole purpose of art is to transcend the horrors of the world. Right. That's why people create it, and that's why people seek it out.
Well, that's actually.
I'm sorry, Russell. Can you lower your monitor volume slightly? I'm getting a slight echo.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
You're getting the echo now. I would figure during the more ranty part, you would have really.
No, it's okay. I just heard it. I don't know why. There you go. Okay, it's gone now.
Yeah, that was another point Taibbi made in his piece, that, if it's really a work of art, art should be connecting you to life. And people who are, he actually says in his piece, if more oil executives were in touch with art, maybe they would be less determined to destroy the planet. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said. And the idea, let's get rid of Beethoven. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? These are the great product. It almost.
Beethoven was deaf, by the way, you ableist pieces of shit.
Right. You're being ableist.
Yeah, right.
You're being ableist. This man wrote the fucking Ninth Symphony deaf.
Yeah.
You want to cancel him? This is who you want to cancel. To me, to throw out all of the great things that these civilizations, not just in the West, in general, have produced, is to find, it's almost to get rid of anything that came out of all that horror that was good. And then you only have the horror. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do that? Like, why would you want to look at the bubonic plague and not the Renaissance? Like, why would you want to see the world that way? And again, this is not the West. If your standard is all cultures that have committed atrocities should have their cultural products dismissed, that's the whole world, baby. So you got to get rid of everything. You want to start from now? Okay, I'll tell you what. Given what's out there right now, I'm really not confident that the people alive on the earth today are going to be able to create philosophy, art, music, and literature comparable to what we would be throwing out. So until you can demonstrate that you have something to replace it with, that anyone who has not been brainwashed in a re-education camp is going to be interested in exposing themselves to, have a seat. Have a seat. And leave Van Gogh the fuck alone.
All right, good. That puts a button on that segment. Now let's get to the fun stuff, shall we? We got someone needs to take a trip to the woodshed.
All right, we got to serve up a little beef.
Serve up a little beef here as the main course. So everybody, we've done a couple segments.
Famous micropenis victim, Kyle Kulinski, went on a tirade.
Yeah, right, exactly. We've done a couple video segments about this already, about the anti-war protesters who disrupted the AOC town hall events. If you haven't seen that, you're going to see it right now as we play this, because we tackled the Young Turks' response to this, or I should say Cenk Uyghur's response to this. And now we're going to take a look at Kyle Kulinski's take on what happened there. And, one of the most depressing political developments in a while that I've witnessed, and I think I can speak for Russell as well, is the just vanishing of any sort of serious anti-war left. And we're going to dive into that a bit right here. So let's take a look at Kyle Kulinski's response to this viral video. Now, Kyle does not appear in this video, but he comments on it, and we will hear him. Full disclosure, I did speed this up 30% just so we're not sitting here all night. But we still got, a decent amount to get through, so we will be stopping and starting at various points. Here we go.
Confronted by anti-war protesters. Now, they don't put anti-war in air quotes. I'm going to put anti-war in air quotes. So let's break it down. Let's see what's fair, what's unfair, and all that stuff. And we'll try to...
Let's see what's fair, what's unfair, and all that stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, the revolution will be scrutinized. The revolution will be nitpicked. The revolution will be nuanced. The revolution will be evaluated by a rich guy sitting in an air-conditioned podcast studio in Westchester County, and he will determine how fair and nuanced and reasonable anti-war protesters are being to a member of Congress who ostensibly is anti-war.
Well, according to Nikki, he made it in bed.
Oh, maybe. Maybe.
Yeah. He made the video when he was in bed with Crystal and took advice from last time not to stream from bed. You might be right. That actually might be why he doesn't appear in the video.
I don't know. His sound seems pretty good, unless he put his whole microphone rig in there.
Maybe.
All right, here we go. Let's continue on.
We'll try to see who's right, what makes the most sense, etc.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Congresswoman, none of this matters unless there's a nuclear war, which you voted to send arms and weapons to Ukraine. Tulsi Gabbard, she's left the Democratic Party because they're a bunch of war hawks, okay? You originally voted, you ran...
Let me pause it already, because this guy saying Tulsi Gabbard left the Democratic Party because they are war hawks. That is not the only reason she left the Democratic Party. That was one of, 5, 6, 7 different reasons why she left, and most of the reasons why she left were actually right-wing criticisms.
Oh my God, she left because her criticisms were right-wing. That totally invalidates what these people are saying here. This is Vanguard shit. This is coddling. They mentioned they respected Tulsi Gabbard for leading the Democratic Party, and you're saying Tulsi left the Democratic Party for many reasons, one of which being from an anti-war reason, but there were 6 other reasons she left that were right-wing reasons. Therefore, their mentioning of Tulsi Gabbard invalidates what they're saying. This is bird brain shit. Absolute bird brain nonsense.
Yeah,
stuff
JD,
like,
the Tulsi cultists were actually, they appeared in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about nuclear Armageddon. Totally different subject.
Care about religious freedom. They don't care about the rule of law. Stuff that honestly is garbage. And if you don't take my word for that, go and watch my full breakdown of Tulsi's announcement that she's leaving the Democratic Party. Now,
yeah, I'll get right on that. That's not what this video is about. That's not what this is about. All they said was Tulsi Gabbard left the Democratic Party. One of the reasons she cited was that the Democratic Party are war hawks. That is true. They are war hawks. It is true that she has a long record of anti-war policies. So all that other shit you just mentioned,
and unlike
those are called red herrings. That's what we call a red herring, introducing something that is seemingly relevant to this debate, but not.
That's it.
Now, since that happened, we get this in the Hill. Gabbard to stump for Trump-aligned New Hampshire Senate candidate.
Another big fat red herring served
There's
up
some people
on a
who
plate.
think, hey, Tulsi's leaving the Democratic Party, and she's going to, join the Green Party or join some other left-wing third party, and that's why she's doing it, because she's so principled and she's still criticizing Democrats from their left.
No one cares why she's doing it.
That's not true. Tulsi has, for about a year now, most of the criticism she has of the Democrats are actually from their right, not from their left.
Okay, dipshit, I don't care that Tulsi criticizes Democrats from the right. I don't care that these people in the video, these protesters, are right-wing. Let's say they are right-wing. I don't give a shit. This is not about whether they are right-wing. This is about the merits of what they actually say, which, in fairness, Kyle will attempt to address later, though he does a pretty piss-poor job of it.
Like when she said about Build Back Better, that, it's big government spending and the government's already too big. That's a right-wing criticism. There is no other interpretation of that. That's just
also,
what that is.
Completely irrelevant.
And a lot of the stuff in Build Back Better was stuff that Tulsi had previously supported. Stuff like universal pre-K and elder care, negotiating for lower prescription drug prices.
Okay, notice how quickly we're completely off the topic.
Yeah, look.
I mean, unbelievable.
I believe that Tulsi is all over the place on a wide variety of subjects, and it is very difficult to nail down at this point exactly what she believes, except on one fucking subject. This one, war, because she's actually in the military. She has been extremely consistent about fighting against the military industrial complex, the deep state in Washington, and their homicidal, pathological desire to get us into foreign conflicts. She was working against it in Syria, and we've talked about this. Donald Trump fucked up their whole plan. The war they have now in Ukraine is the one they actually wanted to have in Syria. Donald Trump put the kibosh on it. Now they're having that war in Ukraine. Yeah, she's been all over the place on Medicare for all. It's not clear what she supports, what she believes in at this point, except for this area. And this is what we're talking about, isn't it? They didn't stand up and say, Tulsi Gabbard left the Democratic Party because they're not supporting Medicare for all. That's not what they said.
Right.
That's not what they said. They brought up something that she has been extremely consistent about, and you don't want to take it on.
And
You
they
wanna
just
go
made it
after
an
all these
example. They
red
say
areas.
Tulsi was a Democrat, just like you are a Democrat. Tulsi left the Democratic Party. The main reason for which, according to her, is that they are woke-obsessed war hawks.
Right.
Now, if you have a problem with that, then you have a problem with that, and that's fair enough. But your problem then is mostly with Tulsi Gabbard,
everything
not
else.
with the
Right.
activists who mentioned Tulsi Gabbard in passing.
Well, it's such an unfortunate thing. And I'm not even going to say this is a left thing. This is just an online thing. Everybody tries to attack the source when they don't want to take on the argument. Yeah, we had
Right.
somebody, I was talking the other day about some of the problems in Canada with euthanasia. And somebody said, and I mentioned it came out of Barry Weiss's Substack. And they said, well, I wouldn't trust anything from Barry Weiss. Okay, well, can you refute the facts? Because I'm not interested in what you think about Barry Weiss. It's neither here nor there. It's not relevant. If you can show me that these facts about Canadian euthanasia are not true, that's interesting. There's nothing interesting about that. What you think about Tulsi Gabbard is not interesting. It doesn't matter. What you think about World War III, what you think about what they're saying about nuclear catastrophe, that is relevant.
Exactly. James Vanderzanden stepping up again with a super chat. Where's everybody else?
Boom.
Where's everybody else? We're missing a Yankee game for this, guys. Let's go. Let's put some money in the tip jar, please. Thank you, James.
Let's go.
Voter. Yeah.
Super chat.
Ignoring a voter priorities is the natural and inevitable result of voting blue or red, no matter what. I agree. Indie left news. Keaton needs to do a Jimmy Kimmel impression. I don't even know where to begin with that. But by the way, Indie left news, I appreciate the curation work that you guys do, and thank you for watching. When are one of our clips going to be shared in your little daily? You know,
Yeah, come on. You know,
give
we
us a little plug,
we
you
could
know,
talk to you
like-
about a little gravy because we
Yeah,
got
right,
we got a
exactly.
couple super chats. Maybe we take that. You
Yeah,
tell
right.
you give us your Venmo. You throw us in there. Huh? What do you think? What do you think? You get
Exactly.
you get a little kickback every time you use one of our clips.
Keith, you turned your microphone on a minute ago. I didn't get to you yet. Do you have anything? Do you want to turn on now? There you are. What's up, Keith?
I just think Tulsi, you know, her whole gig is she's been pretty consistent on not like dealing with war or whatever. She wants to
Exactly.
push the anti-interventionist. I think on all other issues, she's kind of a chameleon. She'll do whatever she thinks sells it, and that's it.
Yeah,
You know.
I think that's a good point. And my point is going here is like Cenk Uygur did this. I'm sure a couple other commentators did this. I believe Mike Figueredo did this, although I don't want to get him totally wrong here. And now you see Kyle doing this. Is they're using this as an opportunity to litigate Tulsi Gabbard.
Pretty much.
Tulsi Gabbard
Yeah.
didn't stand up and scream at AOC there. All right. Just because these guys
No.
mentioned that they appreciate Tulsi Gabbard's courage in leading the Democratic Party, that doesn't make them responsible for every position that Tulsi Gabbard takes. Just like Aaron
Yeah.
Mate is not responsible for every position that Jackson Hinkle takes,
Exactly.
right?
We don't play
I 100%.
we don't play
agree
the
with
coddling game here.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
that's what
I
this
agree.
is. That's
So-
what this
It's
is.
the coddling game.
you. But yeah, I agree with you, and that's my point.
And here's a little warmongering Democratic Party classic. This was Hillary Clinton's response to Muammar Gaddafi getting sodomized with a knife.
God.
We came,
we
saw,
he
and he
saw,
died.
and he died.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, so Tulsi's onto something there.
Yeah.
Whatever might be wrong with her in other areas.
Alrighty, Keith. Well,
Thanks,
thank you so
guys.
much. I'm gonna mute you again, and I'll remove you. And if you want to talk again, just turn on. All right, cool. All right, we're gonna go back to Kyle in a second, but here we go. Somebody else stepped up. ID80R found you recently. You replaced the idiocy of the Vanguard with actual analysis. Thanks. You're welcome. Our pleasure. Kyle has been on the outs ever since the Door feud. Kyle, I think. I mean, this is known, and I don't want to get too much into gossip, but oddly enough, the Vanguard boys did cover this way back, where Kyle hit a plateau in terms of his sub numbers. The channel wasn't growing anymore, and he's definitely taken a turn towards the libs. He's definitely tried to get that audience over to his channel by focusing much more on the anti-Trump shit.
Well, the same thing happened with David Dole.
Absolutely.
David Dole's doing that too. Joe Rogan can't fart without him doing a similar thing.
Exactly.
Joe Rogan farts in middle of crowded restaurants, complete disregard for fellow patrons.
Yeah, we have a lot more Kyle to get to, so let's keep going. Oh, hold on.
That's not what Crystal says.
We have someone else wants to actually chime in. We have one other caller. Caller, what do you have to say about this?
You, Cal.
Okay, there we go. I just wanted to take that. Just wanted to take that call there. That was a quick one.
That was a good call.
But that was a good caller, quick to the point. Exactly. All right, here we go.
Kind of caller we like.
Medicare expansion. So for her to say that's big government, so I don't like it, that's a right-wing criticism. For her to say Democrats don't care about religious freedom, religious liberty, that's a right-wing criticism. I don't know why you would seize on the one thing, which was nominally a left criticism, which is, the Democratic Party are war hawks. But then she also immediately stumps for Republicans. That party is also full of war hawks. In fact, it is worse. Trump had a worse foreign policy than Joe Biden does.
Really?
Really?
I don't remember the nuclear Armageddon doomsday clock being this close to midnight under Donald Trump. I don't know. That's just one thing I would put in Trump's column. But also, just, again, that litany of things. What he is mistaking is what everybody in this progressive media space, I don't care if these guys are right-wing. I don't care if they're right-wing. I don't even care if they're particularly smart. I don't even care if their politics make much sense. It does not matter. All that matters is what is on the screen, what they are saying to AOC, who ran as an anti-war progressive socialist and is voting to fund potential nuclear World War III. That's all that matters. None of this other shit means anything unless you are so obsessed with team sports that you just cannot process the idea that someone with inconsistent and, yes, at times shitty opinions can be right on certain issues, and that those issues where they are correct can be important. Let's keep going.
Well, not only that, where are you going to find leftists who would have had the balls to do that?
Well, this is the other thing. Kyle talks
the
about
catch-22.
Well, this is the thing. Kyle talks about we're going to debate the nuance of what they said. Nuanced people don't have the balls to do what these guys did. It tends to be that people who have the balls to go out and flood the streets after a murder of George Floyd, that's why defund the police is as strong as it is, and that's why it comes with certain electoral liabilities, because the people who have the balls to get out in the streets and start shit, they're not going to come up with a milquetoast phrase like reform the police. No, they're going to go for
I'll
broke.
grant you that.
And it's the same as this. All right, here we go.
And to stump for a Trump-aligned candidate, I mean, okay, this guy supports Trump. What did Trump do? 432% increase in drone strikes. Ripped up the Iran deal. Tried to do a coup in Venezuela. Bombed Syria, occupied part of Syria, and was stealing their oil. So, Walker Bragman breaks this down. Gabbard's guy, Army General Don Bolduc, doesn't think Medicare negotiating drug prices is a good thing. In fact, we covered this story recently. He was on Fox News saying, I can't wait to roll that back. So he actively wants higher drug prices. Tulsi's stumping for him. And wants to end the direct election of senators. He opposes legal abortion, has promoted Trump's big lie, and suggested that COVID jabs are installing microchips for Bill Gates.
Okay, this is relevant.
Nice.
How, again?
But they are!
All right, let's run this back a little bit.
I'm kidding.
Nuclear war, which you voted to send arms and weapons to Ukraine. Tulsi Gabbard, she's left the Democratic Party because there are a bunch of war hawks. okay? You originally voted, you ran as an outsider, yet you've been voting to start this war in Ukraine.
What?
You're voting to start a third nuclear war with Russia and China.
That is massively overstated. Who invaded who? Who invaded who? Russia invaded Ukraine. The U.S. didn't invade Ukraine. The U.S. didn't invade Russia. Ukraine didn't invade Russia. Russia invaded Ukraine. So in the wake of Russia invading Ukraine, why is it a bad thing to give them defensive weapons? Now, look, I've told you.
It's a bad thing to give defensive weapons because giving defensive weapons to a country with no chance to actually win the war is only going to prolong the war and get more people killed. Okay? When you talk about defensive weapons, when you talk about arming the Ukrainians, the image that should be in your mind is an image of maggots eating children's eyes, because that's what war actually is. That's what war actually is. Okay?
It's not glorious, you mean?
Right. It's not glorious. It's not valiant. It's not heroic. It's not a movie. So the reason you don't pour billions of dollars of weapons into a war that is slaughtering people by the day, I think I just answered it for you, didn't I? I didn't even have to finish that statement, did I? That's why. That's why.
Look,
if you're going to intervene, you intervene to make peace. And how anyone with any claim to any progressive bona fides could think differently is just a fucking disgrace.
Well, I would split the difference. Look, when they first went in there to see to it that Ukraine didn't fall in a week and then go to negotiations, which seems to have been the plan until Boris Johnson went over there and put the kibosh on it. Like, I could see helping to hold back the Russians from just marching right into Kiev. Okay, I can see that. I can see
but
that.
even
I'm a
you have to
reasonable
say,
madman.
But even that, you have to say they should have negotiated this before the invasion took place. It should have never got to that place.
Well, that's a whole other dimension of this that Kyle is completely ignoring, which at that point, I don't understand what these people are doing in the left media space at that point. Like, you're not talking about, yes, Russia should not have invaded, and they are certainly committing war crimes in Ukraine. Propaganda aside, there's enough credible evidence, I'm sure, that that's true. Putin should be in The Hague. That's not in question. Did it have to go down this way? No. This is the result of Western actions going all the way back to the collapse of the Soviet Union, from Goldman Sachs robbing the country blind, which is how we ended up getting Putin, because when the Russians got a good look at what their new Western friends were going to do unchecked in their country, they went back to the devil they knew, a strong man. That's how you wound up with Putin in the first place. If we had actually treated Russia like a friend after the collapse of the Soviet Union, it would probably be a Western-aligned democracy today. You wouldn't even have Putin. But that's not what we did. Our banks went in there and just raped them. So then you get Putin. Putin never forgot that. He deeply resented it. And after promising that we were not going to expand NATO East, we did nothing but expand NATO East. And we knew Ukraine was a very touchy thing for the Russians. If you look at Russian history, they were repeatedly invaded through their western border. They are very touchy about having enemies on their western border, as we would be. I was talking to somebody the other day talking about how all the countries in Eastern Europe hate Russia because of its centuries of brutality and imperialism in that region. Yes, that's true. That's true. If you talk to people who have ties to that region, you'll never find one who doesn't say we should fight this out to the end. Never. You talk to anyone with ties to Ukraine, Eastern Europe, Poland, anything, they're all for this war. I understand that. Why don't you talk to some South Americans? Ask them what they think about us. Go talk to some Central Americans. Ask them what they think about us. Yeah, Russia plays their games. We play ours. That's not a reason for nuclear war. We are not morally superior to the Russians in regards to how we have treated the countries around us in our own backyard in order to control who is in those regions.
Yeah,
We've
absolutely.
done exactly
And
the
that's
same thing.
Absolutely. And that's not just whataboutism, right? That actually has real world implications, because the point that you made there is a point that we've made on this show going back months, but we haven't made it in a while, so I'll make it one more time. To want to hold Russia to account for what they have done in Ukraine, which absolutely is a war crime, there's no doubt about that. A world in which Russia is held accountable for their war crimes is also a world in which we would have to be held accountable for our war crimes. And that is a completely different world. We probably don't have a podcast like this in that kind of world. Everything about this world is different. Everything about this world, everything about every one of our lives is different, because we don't live inside the imperial United States, if that is the case. And the implications of that are beyond what most people are able to conceptualize. And so the idea that this is worth a nuclear war is just completely insane for that reason, because you don't have the world order balance that you have now in a world where Russia is held accountable in the way that we would then, if we are to be morally consistent at all, would have to be held accountable for our crimes. Thank you, Kenneth, for the $2. Thank you, ID80R, for the $2. I used to respect Kyle, but now, holy boop, 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 boop. All right, we got more to go. Here we go. Let's go.
You guys this. After the first 2 or 3 packages, I would have started to wrap it up a little bit. You know, at this point, we've had, over a dozen packages sent to Ukraine, and it's been somewhere between $50 billion and $80 billion worth of weapons sent to Ukraine. Yeah, I agree that's overkill. And yeah, I agree that's probably because, the politicians are enriching the military-industrial complex. That's probably...
Okay, so now he's saying that they're right. Okay, well, I mean, they're right about what they're saying, but Tulsi Gabbard is now campaigning for Trump candidates, so that means what? What? I mean, what kind of sense do you think you're making here? This is fucking ridiculous.
The thing that they care about first and foremost. So I don't deny that it's overkill, but to say that this means you want a nuclear war.
Overkill. He's going to be saying that when the missiles are sailing over the horizon.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's just overkill.
I mean, I'll give you that as overkill.
That's overkill.
Man, okay, fine. I concede that.
If the United States...
I'm nuanced enough to concede that.
States sent weapons to Palestinians.
Okay, here's
defend themselves.
Hang on, let me
fantastic.
adjust my position, because if I'm going to be one of those nuclear shadows,
yeah, right.
I want to look good.
All right, here we
go.
That
this means you want a nuclear war. What kind of bullshit is that? If the United States sent weapons to Palestinians to defend themselves against Israeli aggression, would this guy say, "Oh, you're a war hawk"?
I would say yes, we are a war hawk. Now, that's a different example for a couple of reasons. One, Israel is a client state of the U.S., number one. And number two, Israel is already occupying Palestinian territory. All right, so that's not a great comparison. But let me just take the merits. If Israel was attacking Palestine, would we want to send weapons to Palestine? Even though Israel would be attacking Palestine with weapons that we gave them. All right, but let's ignore that. Let's ignore that for the purposes of this little thought experiment that you tried to set up.
When you arm both sides, you make double the money.
But the answer is the exact same thing. The answer is we should try to broker peace. We should try to broker peace. That answer remains the exact same. I don't want a bloodbath between the Palestinians and the Israelis, even though I find what Israel is doing to the Palestinians abhorrent. I still don't want a bloodbath over it. We want peace, right? Here's this thing. I don't know if Kyle has ever been exposed to this idea. Traditionally speaking, left-wingers are anti-war. We tend to favor peace over war, right? And that is a principle
boomer.
that kind of applies across the board.
Yeah. If you did send weapons to the Palestinians, it would be part of an overall peace process, but we could have had peace in Ukraine a year ago. This is something he's not touching. The fact, to me, that invalidates this entire conversation. We know Boris Johnson went and sabotaged a peace deal. We could have had peace 2 months into this war. So what the fuck are you even talking about? All these defensive weapons we've sent since then didn't have to happen. Zelensky was ready to sit down. Putin was ready to sit down. 2 months in, they both had good reason to want to end. Zelensky, because he didn't want his country destroyed. Russia, because Putin, look, he's not crazy and he's not stupid, whatever the media might be telling you. He saw that flaws in his military were being exposed very quickly and that this could escalate into something that in the end was not going to benefit him, either domestically or internationally. They were both motivated. You could have brokered a peace 2 months in, but we didn't want to. We're enriching our arms manufacturers, and this is also a new world order power play to try to break the back of a potential rival and antagonist on the world stage. So we're taking that opportunity and risking World War III to do it.
Pro-war. My guess is no. My guess is he would understand, well, those are defensive weapons to the Palestinians. So that's very different by its nature, because it is defensive. But now, all of a sudden, you're saying this is, she wants nuclear war, she wants World War III. I have many criticisms of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I was criticizing her during Force the Vote. I was annoyed that she voted for Pelosi to be Speaker.
Really?
She cast some terrible votes on the issue of Israel-Palestine. I've criticized her. You can go back and check the Secular Talk YouTube library. But
I've been annoyed with
just
her.
Doesn't make any sense.
Why are you playing with the lives of American citizens? You're playing with our lives. There will be no neighbors if there's a nuclear bomb. You voted to mobilize and send money to Ukrainian Nazis. You're a coward. You're a progressive socialist. Where are you against the war mobilization? He's telling the right truth.
This is unbelievable. Who invaded who? Who invaded who? Russia invaded Ukraine. Russia did the imperialist action. That's what happened.
Yes.
Now, I never would have expanded NATO in the first place to give them an excuse to invade, but it's very clear based on Putin's own words that he was probably going to do it anyway. He was talking about returning to the glory of the Russian Empire, about how Ukraine is a fake state, effectively. And the other reason why he probably invaded is there was just oil and gas discovered all over Ukraine. Wow, look at that. They discovered natural gas by Crimea in 2012, and then by 2014, Putin took it over. What a coincidence. So the criticism, the criticism here is misplaced.
Okay, hold on a second. We talk about the Russian Empire. What he's referencing there is Putin's quotes about Peter the Great, right? About how, I want to be the next Peter the Great.
Yeah,
Now,
that was to justify the invasion after the fact to quell domestic resistance.
Well, also,
you can't take that as a serious statement of Russian policy.
Well, even if you could, it's debatable what he meant by that, because Peter the Great sounds like a marauding warlord, right? Peter the Great. Well, that's actually really not what Peter the Great was.
He wanted to align with Europe.
His legacy was not to conquer the world. His legacy was he attempted to modernize Russia and integrate it into the global system. Right. He did that partly by beefing up the Russian military, the Russian Navy, but he also created trade relationships. Right? He wanted to focus on the cultural advancement of Russia. Now, it's very hotly debated to this day how successful he was in doing that. And therefore, it can be debated what Putin meant when he said that. But if we look at what Putin's goals seem to be, what his goals seem to be are very aligned with the sort of more, what I would argue, fair-minded interpretation of the Peter the Great legacy, which is Putin wanted to create a sort of parallel economic order that could perhaps compete with and or cooperate with the West, right? And probably a little bit of both, really. That's business, right? But that's what he wanted to do. And it seems like he's pretty successful in doing that so far. The ruble is stronger now than it was pre-invasion. So that seems to be his goal. His goal does not seem to be global conquest. His goal seems to be creating a multipolar world. And to the extent that we are willing to risk nuclear war to stop that, it is to protect Western hegemony. That is why we are funneling weapons into Ukraine. So if you are willing...
Well, that's what I'm saying.
If you are willing to risk nuclear annihilation over that, then you have to own that. You have to own that. You can't make up stories about how Putin is the next Hitler going to maraud his way throughout Europe and the world. That is a fantasy. That is propaganda.
Every enemy, every time they want the U.S. to get into one of these wars, oh, it's Hitler all over again. There was one person who was worthy of that title. His name was Hitler. There was one Hitler. And his name was Hitler. Every person who comes, and that's a particularly strange metaphor to use when you're talking about Ukraine. Before the Germans even invaded Ukraine, they had 4,000 Ukrainians who had volunteered to fight with the Germans. Many Ukrainians volunteered to be in the concentration camps. So you have a Nazi contingent in the Ukrainian military. You want to talk about Hitler? Really? In regards to Ukraine? That's not someplace that you really want to go. So we have JD here, peace in Ukraine a year ago. You know nothing about Ukraine. Well, I know that a lot of Ukrainians were very strong Nazi collaborators. And I also know that Ukraine has a Nazi battalion that we are funding. And I also know that Ukraine is the most corrupt state in Europe. That's what I know. So why don't we sit down and make some peace? I understand people who have ties to this region feel this way. I'm sure if you talk to a lot of Colombians, a lot of Brazilians, a lot of Nicaraguans, they would say the same thing about the United States, but that's neither here nor there.
And as for his occupying areas of oil and gas, we did the same thing in every country that we've invaded. And like I said, the point of this is not whataboutism. The point is, what kind of world do you want to live in? If you want to live in a world where strong men leaders of imperial powers are truly held to account for their crimes against other countries, then we must accept that punishment ourselves. And that is a completely different world from the world we live in. So people who are advocating for the escalation of this to an apocalyptic level, you're not even clear about the world you want, because the world you want is a world where we are punished also.
Yes.
All right, let's go.
Run it back a touch.
There's a nuclear bomb. You voted to mobilize and send money to Ukrainian Nazis. You're a coward.
Look,
damn right.
There's a small percentage of Ukrainian fighters who are Nazis. It's the Azov battalion.
Nazi
and I've been calling all along
schmazi.
for, if you're going to arm Ukraine, yes, there should be rules and strings attached, and none of them can go to the...
Also, it's not just a portion of fighters who are Nazis. There's a Nazi battalion.
An entire
there are
battalion,
Nazis
yeah.
in Idaho, but there's not a branch of the Idaho National Guard, like the Der Führer, battalion of the Idaho National Guard. It's different when they are a formalized unit. That's different. That's not just saying there are a few bad apples in the military.
Nazis. That seems like a pretty straightforward thing and a fair thing. They haven't done that, right? The U.S. government hasn't done that. We don't know where a lot of the weapons are going. There is a fair criticism there. But also, this guy's not being anywhere near nuanced enough, because the fact of the matter is...
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry the protesters are not nuanced enough. This is what I mean. I say this over and over again about how online the left is. This is a guy sitting in an air-conditioned podcast studio in Westchester County, makes probably $500,000 a year off of his YouTube channel, right? Now is marrying into far more money than that. But let's set that aside, right? Let's not make this personal for now.
For now. But
right.
That segment's coming tomorrow.
Yeah, right. That'll be tomorrow. That'll be the sequel. Right, exactly. Listen, guys who have the balls to do this tend not to be nuanced. That's called mass politics. That's called mass action. That's called direct action. That's why the Black Power symbol, that's why it's a fist in the air. It's not a quill pen on a paper writing out nuanced arguments. Okay? You have to put a fist in the air and take the fight to these people forcefully. If it means that not everything you say comes out exactly right, not every position you articulate is exactly nuanced as it should be, that's because he's out there. He's out there screaming at a congresswoman. Right. That takes a certain level of balls. There's a certain level of
he's going to be very amped up.
Right.
The adrenaline's going. Right.
So I'm sorry if he's not nuanced enough for you. But like I said, this is an online phenomenon. This is what happens when you're too online. Everything has to be perfectly nuanced and perfectly rational and perfectly scripted. And that's not how politics works. It's certainly not how mass politics works. It's not historically how left politics works.
It's certainly not how our channel works.
Right, yeah, definitely not how our channel works.
And a Nazi problem in Russia. And they're the ones who are doing the offensive invasion. They are the ones who are breaking international law. So if you wanted to question Ocasio-Cortez and say, hey, can you propose a bill to, like, as you send weapons to Ukraine, to have it not go to Nazis, I'd be agreeing with him.
Oh, that's what he should have done.
Oh, just keep it away from the Nazis. Well, we happen to have exclusive audio here of a meeting of the Azov battalion. So don't tell me the Ukrainians don't have a Nazi battalion.
Once again,
you got the evidence right there.
Once again, the tone, that was a joke, by the way. That was satire. That's what we call satire, right? So we don't get thrown off the air.
Don't demonetize.
Right, yeah, don't throw us off the air. But again, this obsession with the tone. Hey, why didn't you just ask her, hey, can we stop sending money to the Nazis in Ukraine? Hey, would you mind
ask nicely?
Would you mind not funneling tens of billions of dollars of taxpayer money to egg on World War III? I mean, just ridiculous.
I'd be saying, look, that's fair. If you asked Ocasio-Cortez, hey, could you please prod Biden to say, let's have some sort of diplomatic process, some sort of negotiation.
Oh, I'd be totally with you, bro. If you just asked Ocasio-Cortez, can you please prod Biden? Can you please prod Biden? I'd be with you there. I'd be with you there.
Like he would notice.
Yeah, right.
To try to bring this thing to an end before it spirals out of control. I would totally agree with this guy. But he's just spazzing out and yelling, and the criticisms are not really coherent.
He's protesting too hard.
Right, exactly. That's what he's saying.
He's telling the right truth. You have done nothing. Tulsi Gabbard has shown guts where you...
Guts. Tulsi's shown guts, guys. This is Tulsi showing guts.
Oh, my God.
Leaving the Democrats, not just because they're too pro-war, but also because they're too woke and they attack religious liberty or something. And, oh, yeah, by the way, even though I just said Democrats
See,
are
now
too
he goes
pro-war,
back to this. This is why I didn't think we had to play the
who
whole
are not
thing.
just as pro-war, they are more pro-war.
You've shown cowardice. I believed in you, and you became the very thing you sought to fight against. That's what you've become. You are the establishment, and you are the reason why everybody will end up in a nuclear war unless you choose to stand.
So AOC is the reason why everybody's going to be in a nuclear war. Not, I don't know.
That's not what he said.
The person
well, first of all, if he said you are the reason why we're going to end up in a nuclear war, okay, Kyle, what do you want, a fucking debate point for that? That technically you're right, AOC is not the reason there's going to be nuclear war. Okay, fine. Put a fucking star on your chart, you fucking prick. Why are you nitpicking this guy in this way? Again, he's up there. His adrenaline is rushing, okay? Did that sentence come out exactly in a way that makes total sense? No. But you know what? He's up there doing it, which is more than I could say for you. It's more than I could say for me. It's more than I could say for Russell. It's more than I could say for anybody. Yeah. He went up there and did it. So he lets something slip when you're talking real fast and you're amped up and you're... Who cares? You're going to nitpick him on that? Really? I mean, that's just chicken shit. If he wrote an op-ed in the New York Times saying AOC is the reason we're headed for nuclear war, then, okay, you can nitpick that. But a guy standing up here doing his thing spontaneously says something that is, I guess, technically inaccurate, but we even still understand what the spirit of what he's saying. And you're going to nitpick that? Come on. Come on.
All right, Mr. Weiss, I'm going to break my policy of only recognizing you when you give us money. I was scolded in Beacon, New York today for displaying a disband NATO placard. Oh, we see where you get it from, Keaton. I was told that message is not welcome in a, quote, progressive town like this. Yeah. you gotta, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, right?
Yep.
Drop the nuke? Vladimir Putin? He's not the reason? The guy who would do it if it's going to be done. He's not the problem? I understand reserving some criticism for the West, saying you have to insist on some sort of diplomatic end to this. I get that. So you want to put some of the blame at the people who are escalating out of control.
Man.
I agree with you. Right?
Unbelievable. Well, listen, if Putin were at the town hall in the Bronx, he'd probably say Putin was wrong to invade. Putin's not in the fucking Bronx. Putin is not accountable to this guy. His congresswoman is. Fucking moron.
He comes sometimes. He wears the hat low.
I mean, Jesus. I mean, it's just it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing.
Sometimes he comes for the pizza.
You should reserve some blame for Putin. Putin is not his representative.
Yeah.
Okay.
He didn't elect Putin.
This is what Noam Chomsky said way back then. We are accountable for what our country does. We are responsible for our state as citizens of our state. So this idea that, well, you should blame Putin. Blame Putin where? On Facebook? What, do you want him to write on Facebook that Putin should have invaded? He could tweet that out? That's not activism. That's activism in your online world. That's activism in Kyle Kulinski's online world. Because he's been on YouTube for now, whatever it is, 13 fucking years. He doesn't know the difference between the online world and the real world. In the real world, you go to your congressperson's town hall and you get in their face and you say, how dare you in our name egg on nuclear war, which is exactly what this guy did. And he was exactly right to do it.
Kyle knows he's 2 or 3 years away from an MSNBC contract. He doesn't want to do anything to fuck it up. He's auditioning for Maddow's old slot. They all are. They all are. Anna, Chunk. They're all hoping Alex Wagner is going to keep that seat warm for them.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You're totally missing a plot if you're discussing this as if the U.S. is steering the ship, the U.S. is to blame, or Ukraine is to blame. Because Ukraine didn't start the war, the U.S. didn't start the war, Russia started the war.
Stop right now and denounce the Democratic Party. Will you do that?
Okay, well, so let me ask you a question. If AOC denounces the Democratic Party, but she then goes on to stump for Republicans, would you give her the same credit that you're giving Tulsi Gabbard?
What the fuck?
What the fuck are you even talking
What
about?
are you talking about? What does that have to do with any? What? Let me play that again. I honestly, I don't. Let me just play that again.
I'm like the RCA dog right now. I'm like,
I wasn't going to play this past the 7-minute point because he gets repetitive, but since we have a good crowd, it seems to be digging this. But I hadn't heard that in a while. Let me get this again.
Because Ukraine didn't start the war, the U.S. didn't start the war,
Right.
Russia started the war.
Stop right now and denounce the Democratic Party. Will you do that?
Okay, well, so let me ask you a question. If AOC denounces the Democratic Party, but she then goes on to stump for Republicans, would you give her the same credit that you're giving Tulsi Gabbard? Just curious.
I mean,
fuck are you I think yes.
I think yes.
I think
right.
yes. I think the answer is yes.
That's what I was going to say. I think my answer to that would be yes. Yes, we would, because it doesn't matter. That's not the point. That's not the point here.
Thank you, Mad Marcus. Yes, smash that like button.
Simple.
Boom.
Smash that like button. Absolutely. Thank you guys very much.
Are you going to stop nuclear war? Yes.
Are you going to stop nuclear war? Look, I'll say it again, man.
This guy thinks it's funny. I mean,
I would have voted for the first 2 or 3 defense aid packages to Ukraine. After that, I would have pumped the brakes on it, right?
Okay.
But I don't think you can say, this is not a fair criticism to say, that the people who are continuing to vote for defensive aid to Ukraine, that they are pro-nuclear war.
Yes, it is fair to say that. It is fair to say that because this war can only end in 2 ways. In your fantasy world, Putin's going to get scared and retreat, as if he wasn't planning this for a very long time, as if he hasn't been contemplating an aggressive move against NATO expansion for a very long time. In the fantasy world that you live in, that is a realistic possibility. In the real world, he's liable to snap and do something drastic before he does that, which means every day this war goes on is, pardon the choice of words here, it's Russian roulette. You're playing Russian roulette with nuclear war every day this war goes on.
You don't know what he will do if he is actually looking at defeat.
Exactly.
Does he decide, you know what? I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to do a tactical nuke. I don't think they have the balls to respond. You don't know that he doesn't make that choice. I'm going to do a small scale tactical nuclear strike. Or I'll do a conventional strike on their nuclear plant.
He might not care if we respond. What I get from Putin is that he is a man at the end of his rope. He's fed up. He's all in here. When you're all in, you don't fold and go home. When you're all in, you see it through.
That's it.
God forbid. God forbid. That's why we're saying we need peace. We need peace talks now before that happens. Peace talks now for our sake, and especially, oddly enough, JD, if you're here still, for the sake of the Ukrainian people. We want the Ukrainian people to live. We don't want a nuclear bomb going off in Ukraine. All right? Let's keep going.
That's not a fair criticism. That's not accurate. Again, I'll make this analogy one more time. If the U.S. decided we're going to give a lot of weapons to Palestinians to defend themselves against Israeli aggression, is it a fair thing to say, like, you're pro-war or you want nuclear annihilation? No. You'd say, okay, look, agree or disagree with the action, and you could...
If Palestine has no chance of winning the war and Israel is threatening nuclear escalation, then yes, to fund Palestinians with weapons would be to perpetuate war.
It's very slippery. It's very slippery. I just don't understand.
Because he knows progressives are supposed to defend Palestine, and so he thinks he could gotcha us by going there.
Well, that's what I mean. It's very slippery.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, let me throw in Palestine. Nobody wants to be a Zionist.
Right, exactly.
Which again, I just don't understand why all these people want to play around with Zionism and Nazism when you're talking about a fucking country with a Nazi battalion.
Well, also,
I don't get why they want to keep invoking the chosen people.
Also, in that example, it would have nothing to do with being a Zionist. Just like this has nothing to do. I do not support Vladimir Putin. I do not support what he said. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with that. Saying we shouldn't flood Palestine with billions of dollars worth of weapons in a war they can't win, in a war that is threatening to go nuclear, that is not an endorsement of the Israeli state. Just like peace talks here are not an endorsement of the Russian state. Hold on. Sorry, I lost track of that. Virtuoso. This man courageously expresses his concern for human existence, so somebody has to rattle AOC's royal stagecoach. Kyle's being a sniveling dweeb. He is being a sniveling dweeb. Virtuoso. Hey, Virtuoso, thank you for the $5. Virtuoso,
Listen,
you got a Yankee score for me, bud? You got an update?
I said this at the risk of repeating myself. The only reason Kyle has an audience is that he got in 13 years ago when 7 people were doing this. If he started a channel today, he would have 6 subscribers and 2 of them would be his parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who the hell would sign up to watch this boring moron today if he tried to get into this space? Other than maybe, believe me, he wouldn't be getting in on that crystal action if he started today.
Criticize the action. It's defensive. It's defensive in nature. The intent is defensive.
Yes or no? There is no line. Because
By the way, what's crazy is you can't even hear a word she's saying, and she's got a microphone. This other guy doesn't have a microphone, and you hear him loud and clear.
Yeah, that's called an
none of
activist.
this matters if you're
Activists tend to
okay.
be loud.
None of it. You know that. Then let's take it up right now because this is the only thing that matters.
This truly is incredible to me. Look, if these guys want to save all of their energy to, like, go yell at Joe Biden and say, get us in a fucking diplomatic negotiation, you motherfucker. Please, let's negotiate this thing. I would understand that. But that's not what this is. Blame, first and foremost, goes to the person who did the illegal and offensive invasion. That's Vladimir Putin.
Okay, well, Vladimir Putin's not in town this week, so he couldn't say this to Vladimir Putin. Joe Biden...
He's on the road right now. He's doing 2 shows a night in Tulsa.
Exactly. Joe Biden is an imperialist warmonger. We've known that for 50 fucking years now. Joe Biden did not run as someone who was going to be a voice against this kind of insanity. AOC did. And AOC is in this guy's district, or at least a neighboring district, a bus ride away, wherever this guy lives. That's why he's saying it to her, because she is ostensibly, theoretically, accountable to an anti-war left movement. Joe Biden is not. That's
Putin
why
is
you
not
say
his
this to
congressman.
AOC. Right. And neither is Joe Biden.
And then if you want to, after that, say, hey, Joe Biden, we know this motherfucker's crazy, but please, let's try to sort this out where we don't all end up dead in nuclear war. So for the love of God, pick up the phone and make the call. Like,
listen, I don't think you should say that after anything. Why that would come second to anything is suicidally insane. First blame Putin, then say and then ask Joe Biden, hey, maybe you should keep us out of a nuclear war. No, the urgency that this guy is expressing.
Ask nicely.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, it's just really wow.
Let's talk to Zelensky and say, I know you want to defend every last inch of Ukraine, but let's sit down and talk this out and maybe find something that we could do which could avert a worst case scenario. I would agree with all of that, but that's not what this is. This is just like spazzing out and acting like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez just started World War III.
Spazzing out. By spazzing out, you mean...
I thought you're not allowed to say that anymore. Didn't Beyonce just get in trouble for having spaz in her album? She had to take it out.
Well, aside from being very unwoke, it's just such an elitist take on an activist that he's spazzing out.
Oh, God. He's like spazzing out. Oh, my God. Look
He's
at
so
him right
unlettered.
now. Oh, my God.
He's got to
He
get it
should be
together.
hoisted on his own petard.
Right,
Oh.
exactly. I mean, what a privileged and condescending thing to say. What a condescending thing to say. He's spazzing out.
This is the only thing that matters right now. We could be in a nuclear war at any minute, and you continue to fund it. That's what's going on.
She's not continuing to fund nuclear war. She's continuing to fund defensive arms to a country that got illegally invaded.
Oh, my God.
Jeez, I mean, this is brainworms, dude. Like, there are some people...
Dude.
There's
Brainworms, dude.
a particular mindset that pops up sometimes on the left, which is just like fucking the enemy of all nuance and reason.
Here it is. Here it
War,
is. Here comes the clip. Here's the real... This is the real showing of the hand.
War,
right here.
she's continuing to fund defensive arms to a country that got illegally invaded.
Here it comes.
Jeez, I mean, this is brainworms, dude. Like, there are some people... There's a particular mindset that pops up sometimes on the left, which is just like fucking the enemy of all nuance and reason, which is, it's sort of like a reverse American exceptionalism, in the same way that many people on the far right and neocons think, like, America is the best and everything comes back to us, like being the world police and stuff like that. There's a left-wing analog to that, which is America is to blame for absolutely everything, no matter what. Even when the facts are just obviously counter to that. But that's what this mindset is. That's what this mindset is. Somehow, we bear 100% of the blame for Vladimir Putin illegally and offensively invading his neighbor.
Why not right now? You're the liar here.
He's being
Nobody
rude.
has held you accountable.
Is that like
And it
when
is
you
time for you
when
to
you
stand up.
occupied Nancy Pelosi's office before you'd even been sworn into Congress? That kind of rude.
Or
Back when
bringing
you
the
had
ruckus
some
to
kind
the
of
Democratic
principles?
Party. Wasn't that a quote of hers? We should
Yeah.
bring the ruckus to the Democratic Party.
Well, welcome to the ruckus,
Right.
Alexandria.
Welcome
the
to
ruckus.
the ruckus.
And realize that what you've been saying has been lies. Let your conscience come through for once.
Forgive me for not accepting lectures on somebody's conscience when he was just sucking off Tulsi Gabbard, and here's what Tulsi's doing right now.
Oh my God. All right. Hit back to this.
I'll say it again. I have plenty of criticisms of AOC. In fact, I'm sure at this point, AOC fucking hates my guts. Because I have criticized her. I've criticized her enough where she probably thinks some of the criticisms are unfair. Obviously, I disagree. I think every criticism I've ever leveled at her has been fair. But this is just like, fuck, AOC derangement syndrome. And they've totally lost the plot on Russia and Ukraine.
All right. Beautiful work, Kyle.
Oh my God.
Beautiful work, Kyle.
You, Kyle! You, Kyle!
All right, so listen, we're gonna do a follow-up segment on his plan for peace in the Ukraine, where Crystal sits there like the fucking progressive Stepford wife, gazing at him lovingly. Okay, babe, okay, and it's really it's getting very it's getting very dysfunctional there, because you can see that he likes using her as a prop, and whatever, I don't know if she has daddy issues. I don't know what it is. She's much smarter than he is. She's much more talented than he is. For whatever reason, she seems to be willing to play along and take this subservient role in these set pieces that he sets up.
I mean, the idea that Kyle came up with a peace deal. I mean, he did put out his pease deal on Friday.
He did,
we're going to tackle that. We're going to go live with that.
We're gonna get into that
tomorrow or Tuesday. That'll be in our sequel. We'll have you coming back for that. We will announce that the morning of, but we will delve into that also. But you notice that line that he dropped in at the end there about how some people think America's always wrong no matter what. That's a very neocon Bush era, you're blaming America first kind of line.
Right.
I mean, that is the exact reflex. And that is the instinct that the libs have in common with the like Lincoln Project GOPers, is they have this instinct, whereas it is not fair to blame America first, right? It's this reaction, right, to that.
You know what? You can blame both. You could blame both. How about that? Because during this entire segment, and I don't think if you sat those guys down, they would say, yeah, Putin is doing great work over there in Ukraine. I don't get that impression. I get the impression these guys don't want to die.
Yeah, those sounded like guys who didn't want to die. Right. They have a right to express that they don't want to die. Exactly.
Yeah. So how is that blaming America for everything? They didn't even really get into who's to blame in the overall situation. They were simply saying, let's stop adding fuel to this fire. Let's stop sending weapons there. So how is that blaming America for everything?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a ludicrous thing. It's a ludicrous thing.
Putin's a gangster. That's neither here nor there. The USSR brutalized its people. Richard Nixon sat down with the Soviets. Ronald Reagan sat down with the Soviets. Dwight Eisenhower sat down with the Soviets. That it has nothing to do with anything. This is childish. That's international diplomacy. You don't do diplomacy with your friends. You need to do diplomacy with your enemies.
Exactly. You do diplomacy with your enemies. Diplomacy is an alternative to war for that reason. You engage in diplomacy with your adversaries, right? That's the whole point of diplomacy.
Right. This whole idea, you don't speak to regimes that are morally reprehensible. Hey, I don't even want to hear it because Biden is still coughing up the Saudi cum that he drank when he went over there a couple of weeks ago. That's it. They're pulling us off YouTube. So, I mean, we deal with horrible regimes all the time when it's in our interests. What is the way Putin runs Russia have to do with anything on that level? On that level, we have never applied that standard in regards to who we will do business with. We do business with China. I would argue China has a much worse human rights record than Russia does, than modern day Russia does, which is not to say they don't have a bad human rights record. But China literally executes prisoners and sells their organs on the black market. I've never heard of anything like that coming out of Putin's Russia.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the one other point I just want to drive home before we wrap, it's something that he kept going to this idea. He went back to Tulsi Gabbard's right-wing social positions 3 times. He went back to it 3 times. That was like a motif of that segment. He opened with it, he went to it in Act 2, and he went to it again in Act 3. The signaling there is that these guys, it's the same.
At least he knows his Aristotelian unities.
Right, yeah, exactly. Right. He had at least a through-line, good 3-act plot structure there.
There you go.
But he did the same thing that Cenk Uygur did, and we did a segment on Cenk's reaction to this very incident as well, which is he is most concerned with signaling that these guys, these protesters, are not one of us. They're not in our club.
Yeah.
They're not progressives. Yeah. And he was addressing that first and the substance of what they said second. That Tulsi Gabbard's evolution or devolution, if you want to call it that, on domestic progressive policy, be it economic policy or social policy, that is relevant to this conversation at all is absurd. To bring that up 3 times, to make that the through line of the piece, that's brainworms, dude.
Brainworms.
That's brainworms, dude.
Well, that's it. They've all become, all of these people, Kyle, Dole, the Young Turks, they've all become corporate media. They all use the same corporate media techniques of trying to smear, throw mud, put an ick factor on people they're trying to discredit rather than take on their argument. We came over, and the people who are in this alternative media space, to get away from that. And now the people who got in earliest so that they have the most success, they're eyeing their next career move, which I believe they're all looking to corporate media. They're all waiting for CNN, MSNBC. They're all looking to be pundits on there. So they don't want to cross certain lines that will make that make them just verboten for those organizations. They can't say certain things.
Brain worms, bro. Nice use of emojis there, Ryan Wood.
Nice work. I wouldn't even know how to begin to make that emoji.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
So, folks, I want to say once again, while we have you here, while we have a big crowd here, the more subscribers we get over at patreon.com/do dissidents, the more live streams we can do like this. What we were saying last week is true. We keep a separate little GoBank account for this show. When that account balance hits 0, show's over. I am a delivery driver with 2 kids that I got to take care of. Russell's looking into nursing homes. You know, those are very expensive as well.
My knees are going.
Yeah. And so we love doing the show. We love making these streams free for everybody. But if you can help us out and support us for as little as $5 a month over at Patreon, not only do you get call-in access to this show like Keith took advantage of earlier, but you also get bonus videos and podcasts every month. So if you do that, we would love you for it. If you can also head over to our Rumble channel, just go to rumble.com and search Do Dissidents. We would like to be able to live stream there as well, but we need 100 subscribers there in order to do that. So we are getting there. We're almost there. But if you can do that, that would just give us another platform to be able to stream to. We are still going to stream on YouTube for as long as YouTube will have us. But we would like to be able to, like I said, stream as many platforms as possible simultaneously. Frank Arroyo, what's up, Frank? Thank you so much. Frank is a patron. Frank, tell everybody how great it is to be a patron. Put a little testimonial on the live chat for us. Could you do that, please?
It's the only thing keeping him going. He actually wrote us a very tortured note the other day. We had to talk him down literally off a ledge.
Time to invest in a Better Off Dead soundbite. Yeah, that would be a good one. That'd be a good one. We haven't used too many sound drops, although we did make good use of the Eric Cartman one.
Support the guys who will make Joe Biden oral sex jokes, guaranteeing we're never going to sell out because they're never going to let us.
Right.
Just going back into our back catalog, they're just going to be like, no. It's
Way
too late now, boys. Too late now. We could totally reverse. We could start obsessing on Joe Rogan and his foul perfidy, and they're not going to take us now.
Exactly.
You cannot make a Joe Biden gargling cum joke on the air and ever wind up warming a seat on MSNBC.
No, that's not in our future. And I don't work well enough with others to be in that space. Like the great thing about being independent media is that, like, no matter how much this show grows, it's always just going to be me and Russell on our laptops. We're not hiring producers. I'm not hiring interns. I don't work well with other people. Russell and I are we're two New York guys. We get along with each other like that. We can work with each other. I can't work in a team. So don't worry. We're never going to sell out in that way. It's always going to be just us here. Who else we got? Bill Bradley says, got to run.
I'm looking into a new cat mascot, so it'll be 3 of us there.
Oh, there we go. Yes, we'll get our cat mascot back. Absolutely. That would be great. All right, everybody. Well, thank you guys very much. I think that's everything we got, right?
That's what we got for now.
Stay tuned for our. I think we'll probably do that.
If you think this was rough, we're really going to get into the Kyle and Crystal thing.
Well, we're going to get into their peace plan. He has a peace plan.
When we get into the peace plan video.
Yeah, absolutely.
That video was creepy as fuck. She's in a hostage situation over there. Seriously.
All right, everybody.
I don't know what he's doing to her. It's like Nexium over there.
I mean, it was weird because the thing about that peace plan video is he's outlining his peace plan and she's correcting him as he goes.
As he goes, but like gazing at him adoringly. Right. It's like the freaking Manson family. What the hell is he doing to her? It's like friggin', what is he, a Scientologist? What's going on? What's going on over there?
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much. This was a great show.
It's like Katie before she realized Tom was a psycho.
All right, this was a great stream. This was a great crowd. Thank you so much to our Twitch audience, our new Twitch audience. I'll have to come over there and say hello to you guys. I'll have to figure out how to work Twitch so I could do that. But thank you guys. Thank you to our YouTube, our
thank
Facebook
you very much
viewers.
for joining tonight.
Yes, absolutely. It was great to have you guys. Thank you for the lively chat over in Twitch land. We can see your comments here. YouTube was a great chat as well. We had a great crowd. So thank you very much. I'm going to make one more pitch. Patreon.com/Do Dissidents to help us keep this show going. Kenneth Locke, great show. Do Dissidents studs. Well, thank you, and thank you for your donations, sir. We much appreciate that. Did not forget about that. And so thank you. Oh, one more caller. Hold on. One more.
Fuck you, Kyle.
Okay, one more call. He's still on the same message there.
He's still on. Kyle broke his brain.
he's still upset. He's
very worked up.
He's still hot. Yeah, exactly. All right, everybody. Well, thank you very much. Be safe. Be well. We'll see you all next time.
Please clap.